We're here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's January 10th here in Seoul. I'm Xinhyun, and you're watching News Generation. Joining me in the studio is Walter Lee.
Lovely to be here.
Good morning, and Kwon Ju-hyun.
Hello, happy hump day.
Good morning. Now, both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. As usual, let's start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. In a few days, Taiwan will hold its presidential election. The current president, Tsai Ing-wen, will step down, and the runners are between the Democratic Progressive Party's Lai Ching-te, Kuomintang's Ho Yo-hee, and Taiwan People's Party Ko Wen-ji. Now, leading up to the elections, media outlets have been shedding light on how China has tried to shape the results of the elections. The VOA reported that China has been floating high-altitude balloons over the Taiwan Strait to exert its military capabilities. The South China Morning Post pointed to how the CCP has been giving out discounts of up to 90% of the original price for plane tickets to Taiwanese voters who had pro-Chinese intent. And all 7 members of BTS are doing their military service. As many are missing the septet, one application called The Camp has decided to use this as a profitable opportunity. The app, which allows people to send letters to their loved ones during military service, has been found using pictures of BTS members and even selling dolls with BTS name tags without their agency's permission. Hype has since looked into this and is pursuing legal action against the app for violating and exploiting the members' publicity. And lastly, it's been a few weeks since actor Lee Sung-yoon was found dead in a car park. Police suspect that he took his own life as he was being investigated since October over charges of illicit drug use. To get to the bottom of why Lee died, a coalition of prominent cultural figures like the Oscar-winning film Parasite's director Bong Joon-ho and singer Yoon Jong-shin will be holding a press conference on Friday. They will address the death of Lee and advocate for critical reforms needed in the cultural and arts industry to prevent similar tragedies from ever happening again. Now, here's what we know so far about what will be addressed on Friday. The demands include a comprehensive investigation by authorities to disclose the truth behind Lee Sung-yoon's death, also for media outlets to better fact-check and stick to ethical guidelines when reporting. In detail, for them to remove any coverage that could elicit false information or rumors, and to stick to the function of journalism, which is to accurately deliver news. Another key demand would be better amending existing laws to safeguard the rights of cultural artists. And Chuyeon, I think you could relate to this story in particular. What do you think about what the coalition of cultural figures are trying to demand for?
Well, first of all, media outlets should tell the truth, always tell the truth, and follow the rules for good reporting to help people better understand the truth and the false information. And this is what we do here at this broadcasting station. And so false information spreading can actually cause serious consequences, leading to misunderstandings and harming the reputation of the individuals and organizations. And this might be one of the reasons that the actor committed a suicide. And I was actually in the middle of this false information spreading. I think I was the victim. The reporters did not verify the information, but the rumors were spreading. And I do think that this experience was a kind of experience that I don't want to go through again.
I mean, I can't imagine the emotional roller coaster you must have been through. And that's why I would like to say, with social media being so prevalent, I think a lot of people are actually looking at false news and then better spreading it, which adds on, it snowpiles to the rumors that could be spreading, and it victimizes people. But what are your thoughts on how prominent cultural figures are gathering together on Friday to make an announcement? Are you for or against this?
Well, obviously I'm for this, and I completely agree with what Ji-hyun said before. Sadly, for media outlets, and this is very hard talking from a person who works in the media outlet, but the most important thing is who got the first scoop for many very big outlets out there. And it's sometimes not clear about the information that is coming out. So a lot of media outlets go on assumptions rather than actual facts.
Right.
And which can lead to, as we mentioned, a lot of misleading information. Now, this can lead to a term called moral panic, which basically is information based, well, I guess false information or exaggerated information that heads out to the public and therefore creates a sense of insecurity, a sense of fear, or a sense of, misinformation, and they're going to start spreading it themselves. Now, this is not great, and it's usually fueled by the media, but as a person who works in the media, we have to be very careful and tread lightly on what we perceive out there.
Exactly, and I think now is the time because we've seen this happen so many times before. Even though police are doing a great job in investigations and stuff like that, sometimes media does take a toll on the process. There's a lot of unnecessary public opinion that really just exacerbates the process even before the truth is actually disclosed. So hopefully we'll see some breakthrough there. Switching gears now to our main discussion topic of the day, a big task South Korea needs to prioritize this year is stopping what's already the world's lowest fertility rate from falling even further. My AI voice secretary will explain just how low our birth rates are.
South Korea has the lowest birth rates in the world. Last year, the number of babies expected per woman dropped to 0.72. Demographic experts believe that those figures will continue to fall through 2025, all the way down to 0.65. Such projections point to how low birth rates will cause Korea's workforce to dwindle, as well as threaten its national security. That's because a lower birth rate would reduce the pool of men available to join mandatory military service to counter threats from North Korea.
For the past few years, low birth rates have posed a serious concern for the Korean society, and that's why officials have been ramping up efforts to counter this and boost birth rates. So here in the studio, Walter, why don't you take us through on the policies that could boost birth rate from this year?
Okay, so if we take a look at the screen, we can actually show you some of the benefits that the government are proposing or going to put into place. Now, starting with expand parental benefits. Now, starting from January 1st of this year, from day one until 1 year old, parents will be able to receive approximately $760. This is up from approximately $530 per month. Now, after 1 year, it does reduce to $380 or approximately, but this is actually up from the original $270 that they would receive after when the baby turns a year. Now, when you give birth to a baby, you automatically do get money from the government, and it actually is now starting to support multi-child homes. So when you give birth to your first baby, the government gives you approximately around $1,520 and for the second baby, you get approximately about $2,280. And the last one I'll say before Jihyun takes over is the government will support any couple struggling with conceiving a baby by receiving government-funded IVF treatment. Now, originally there was a cap to how much you made, where the government wouldn't give you that support, but now it's open to everybody.
I see. So a lot of financial support will be given to parents with newborns. Now, Jihyun, would you like to walk us through on any more policies that we'll be seeing from this year?
Of course, we have a bunch of policies from the government. The next one is 6+6 parental leave. Under the revised law, working parents with a baby aged 18 months or younger will be eligible for a combined parental benefit of up to $30,000 for a 6-month duration if both parents take parental leave. And a special housing supply program for families with newborns will be implemented for both public and private housing as well. And the government has also introduced a newborn special loan. This is a program that offers a special interest rate between 1.6% and 3.3% for buying a new house. With this, people can borrow up to about $380,000. And if a couple is planning to marry or expecting a child, they are eligible for a gift tax deduction of up to a combined total of $230,000.
It's quite interesting to see how these policies really reflect what it takes to raise a child here in Korea. It's not only about having enough money and saving up, it's also about raising the child. You need a house, you need loans, you need the money to be raising the child from day one all the way, maybe even after college. Exactly. So as a millennial parent, both of you have children. So do you guys think the latest low birth rate policies would be a really effective way? Or what does your spouse or similar aged friends think about these policies?
Well, many couples do want to have children, but they're all worried about the cost of living, housing, and financial issues. And these practical supports can actually make a big difference. And personally, I do like the idea of 6+6 parental leave, but this should be extended to all workers, including regular, non-regular, and freelancers as well. And providing and supporting the family financially when the child is born is such a great idea from the government. But addressing the cost of living, the soaring cost of postnatal care centres, or 산후조리원 in Korean, and improving the working hours, the flexible working hour system should be considered as well.
Exactly, because as we mentioned, it's not just about having enough money to give birth to a child. It's about raising that child and making sure that that child is doing a good life here in Korea. But Walter, what are your thoughts? You have a child that's now turning 1 soon. Do you think that these policies will actually encourage a lot of young adults, including myself, to want to have kids?
Well, it's hard for me to say whether this is enough to boost the birth rate, because I know that there are certain groups out there who are thinking of the financial reasons of whether or not to have children. So I think this really appeals to them. But as we've discussed on the show before, there are many other different factors that are reasons behind the low birth rate, such as, choosing your career, prolonging your career, especially with women, and people obviously being responsible that they just can't look after a child. They just don't have the patience or the capabilities, which I completely understand. Now, it's interesting that we are getting this extra money from the government, but do I see it being a boost in the, I guess, the fertility rate? I don't know, and I don't think so, to be honest with you.
We'll have to see how these policies play out and whether they would actually encourage young adults to really want to have kids. But low birth rates aren't just confined to Korea, though our figures are even below 1 per woman. We have been seeing figures drop in other countries as well, though not as rapidly as they're falling here. So how are other countries trying to tackle low birth rates?
Well, in the United States, Denmark and Sweden, they have managed to keep the birth rate at 1.7 birth rates per woman. And the France case is quite positive. They have they're approaching the level of 2.0 birth rates per woman. That's quite a lot. So family-friendly policies, financial support, gender equality, work-life balance, etc., were some of the policies, some of the strategies that these countries have implemented over an extended period of time in order to encourage the young people to have more children.
And hopefully we'll look into details about how these countries are actually boosting birth rates. But would you like to add a few countries to the list?
Yeah, so obviously I usually try to add Australia to the list, and these days we're seeing a different trend happening where men are becoming more of the stay-at-home I guess, the player in that era. So as a freelancer, I would also like to take upon that part-time job of being a stay-at-home dad. However, for Korea, it's very difficult to find a full-time job where you can get parental leave long enough. However, in Australia, for instance, working fathers and partners, this is including same-sex partners, are eligible for 2 weeks of leave paid at a minimum wage. Now, this isn't much paid by the Australian government, but it's a start and it can only get better from here. And also, we're looking at the Scandinavian country of Sweden. They actually give up to 480 days of parental leave. Now, there are some more details that we'll get into it when we talk to our guest today.
Exactly, and we'll be looking forward to that. In the meantime, we did ask our viewers from different parts of the world on what they thought the best birth rate boosting policies were. Here's what 3 of them had to say. Take a look at the screen to find out. Let's start with Tasmia. Tasmia said, the biggest reason I see why most people don't want to get married and have children is the financial aspect. To raise children, we need shelter, food, healthcare, and education, and all of this is only possible if there is deflation. Giselle said the housing prices have to become affordable first. Once couples can have a house and feel comfortable and stable, then they can consider adding on the responsibility of having a child. Red Hidinghood said policies that enable women to keep and advance in their jobs while still having children. It shouldn't be a choice between one or the other. Also, much more emphasis in the education system on having children and family values. And I think what we can tell from our viewers is it doesn't really matter which country you are in. We all have similar thoughts as to what we need to do to boost birth rates. And that's because birth rates are dropping even in Nordic countries, prominent for its welfare policies and trying to ensure a work-life balance for parents, mainly because we don't have much certainty these days. Nonetheless, Nordic countries like Sweden, as Walter briefly mentioned, are trying their best to boost birth rate policies to tackle any demographic-related social or economic consequences. So let's find out what these countries are doing by including a fellow Gen Z from Sweden. Let's include Lovisa Erlandson, a fellow Gen Z living in Sweden, in our talks. Welcome, Lovisa.
Hi. Thank
Hi.
you.
Nice to meet you. Now, Lovisa, I'd like to ask you the first question. What are some birth rate policies in Sweden at the moment? And in your opinion, which ones seem to be the most effective?
Yes, so for one thing, we have parental insurance, which provide, for example, economic support and protection against dismissal. We also have financial support, such as child benefit for parents with children under the age of 16. And then you get around $140 per month. And if you have more than one child, you will get a child benefit supplement. So for every additional child you get more financial support. And we also have childcare, which is accessible, flexible, and diverse. And the childcare is highly subsidized so that it's not too expensive for the parents to have their children at preschool. And it's also free to go to school all the way from first grade to university. And I think that this financial support is a common factor in most of the policies, which is effective for the birth rate.
Wow, looks like I'll be moving to Sweden soon. It sounds like a very good place to live for families. But we mentioned throughout today's episode that South Korea needs to better ensure maternity and parental leave. What's it like in Sweden exactly?
Yes, so in Sweden, we have a paternity leave policy where the parents in Sweden are entitled to 480 days of paid parental leave when a child is born or adopted, and then each parent is entitled to 240 of those days. And since of 2016, each parent has 90 days reserved exclusively for the baby. And we also have a parental leave allowance, which is quite high. It's at 80% of the salary. And other than that, I think that in Sweden we have come quite far in the questions regarding gender and social equality, which is a reason to why both parents have the right and obligation to stay home with the baby, which I think is an important factor of the increased birth rate.
Interesting, Lovisa. And what measures do you believe could further motivate young adults in Sweden to consider having children?
Yes, so of course, I think that it's not easy to raise children since doing so requires a lot of effort. And other than that, young adults in Sweden are also passionate about their career, which per se is an obstacle for increased childbirth, because even if you have paternity and maternity leave that eliminate the risk of being fired, there is no guarantee that you can get promoted as quickly as you'd wish. But I actually think that the welfare and policies that we have in Sweden are supportive enough for adults to have more children today. And I think that our policies and our welfare are actually one of the reasons, if not the main reason, to why we could overcome our lowest birth rates.
I agree. Thank you so much, Lovisa. It was a pleasure hearing from you and learning more about the birth rate policies in Sweden.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
All right.
Thank you.
On that note, here in the studio, what do you guys think needs more work to boost birth rates in Korea? We're seeing such low birth rates. We're heading into a super age society. Next year, we'll see most of the population be seniors soon. As a parent and a fellow millennial, do you have your own tips as to better encourage young adults to have kids?
So yeah, for me, this is a tricky question because, as I mentioned earlier, some people don't want to be parents, and therefore I don't think that we should push them to be parents because it's a massive responsibility, and it does, you know, if you want to be a good parent, it takes all of your energy, no matter what. You could try and, you know, delegate jobs and make sure you get enough sleep, but you're not going to get
preaching to the choir.
You're not going to get enough sleep. But plus, for other reasons that I mentioned, for choosing not to, like even in Sweden, which is interesting to hear that people are also very passionate about what they want to do and they want to follow their career. And sometimes their career doesn't really get started until their 30s and sometimes into their 40s. And for women, you know, they have that certain period of time where it's the most safe to have children, and if they pass that period, it's not like they can't, it's just a little bit more risky. I guess we're speaking today to those couples who are thinking about it in a financial aspect,
Exactly.
which I've also been into. Like my wife and I were, before we got married, we were basically saying no kids because of the situation that Korea is in. Financially, we can't afford it. After some thinking, we did realize that the government are giving some benefits. Do I think it's enough? Of course, I don't think it's enough. I would love more. But for the time being, it is an improvement in what we're dealing with at the moment.
And I just have a suggestion. I just hope our generation, as proactive as we are, maybe we can come up with solutions, I mean, the government is doing a great job in trying to implement all these different policies that can boost birth rate, but at the same time, maybe we can find an innovative idea, because at the end of the day, I think for people who do want children, it's not really about whether it's they want it or not.
Yes.
I personally really want to have kids, but as you really eloquently mentioned, it's really about, is this the right timing?
Yes.
The time is clicking in terms of my career path, but having a child right now, would it actually affect my career path? Is the country and society ready for me to go onto that path as a working mom? These are some things that I'm considering, but I do know that realistically, it's really hard to only rely on the government about it. We need to be facilitating better conversations with people from our generation, because we'll be leading the way. We'll be having to find solutions for this. Now, Chuhyun, you're still a parent and you're a working mom, which is why I have so much respect for you in that area. But what do you think needs to be done to better encourage people like myself to want to have kids?
Well, it is indeed important to consider the cost of living, the cost of housing, and education expenses for a baby. These could be the potential challenges they will encounter. But once you have a baby, you will realize, you'll come to appreciate how valuable and precious they truly are. They're so cute, adorable, and chubby, so that you almost forget those difficulties and manage to get through them eventually. I'm not suggesting we ignore those old important issues, but I believe a society that makes it easier and comfortable for parents to have a child and raise their children here, exactly here in Korea, will come soon. And that will be my prime time, the perfect time for me to have my third child. If it's a daughter.
Yeah,
so I think it's a daughter. If it's a daughter, yes.
That too, I think that's a very important element here. And as you really mentioned very well, I think it's all about having these conversations. I think this can definitely encourage a lot of young adults to have that hope too.
I know.
And have that hope and optimism that you can raise a child well here in Korea. And we'll hope to facilitate more conversations like that. But in the meantime, we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Walter Lee.
Love to be here.
And Kwon Ji-yeon.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are News Generation.